The uses of the permutational calendar extend to virtually all aspects of Balinese life. In the first instance, it determines, with one exception, all the holidays, that is, general community celebrations, of which Goris lists some 32 in all, or on the average about 1 day out of every 7. These do not appear, however, in any discernible overall rhythm. If we begin arbitrarily with Radit Tunglet painting as one holidays appear on days numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, 15, 24, 49, 51, 68, 69, 71, 72, 73, 74, 77, 78, 79, 81, 83, 84, 85, 109, 119, 125, 154, 183, 189, 193, 196, 205, 210. The result of this sort of spasmodic occurrence of festivals, large and small, is a perception of time, that is, of days, as falling broadly into two very general varieties, full and empty. Days on which something of importance goes on, and others on which nothing, or at least nothing much goes on. The former often being called times of junctures, and the later wholes. All of the other applications of the calendar merely reinforce and refine this general perception. Of these other applications, the most important is the determination of temple celebrations. No one knows how many temples there are on Bali, though Schwellengrebel has estimated that there are more than 20,000. Each of these temples, family temples, descent groups temples, agricultural temples, dead temples, settlement temples, associational temples, caste temples, state temples, and so on, has its own day of celebration called Odalan, a term which thought commonly and misleadingly translated as birthday, or worse yet, anniversary, literally means coming out, emergence, appearance. That is not the day on which the temple has built, but the day on which it is, and since it has been in existence, always been activated, on which the gods come down from the heavens to inhabit it. In between Odalans, it is quiescent, uninhabited, empty, and aside from a few offerings prepared by its priest on certain days, nothing happens there. For the great majority of the temples, the Odalan is determined according to the permutational calendar. For the remainder, Odalans are determined by the lunar solar calendar, which we shall see, comes to about the same thing so far as modes of time perception are concerned. Again, in terms of the interaction of the 5, 6, and 7 name cycles, what this means is that temple ceremonies, which range from the incredible elaborate of the almost invisibly simple, are oft, to put in mildly, frequent occurrence in Bali. though here here to there are certain days on which many such celebrations fall, and others on which, for essentially metaphysical reasons, none do. Balinese life is thus not only irregularly punctuated by frequent holidays, which everyone celebrates, but by even more frequent temple celebrations, which involve only those who are, usually by birth, members of the temple. As most Balinese belong to a half dozen temples of more, this makes for a fairly busy, not to say frenetic ritual life, though again one which alternates unrhythmically between hyperreactivity and quiescence. In addition to these more religious matters or all holidays and temple festivals, the permutational calendar invades and encompasses the more secular ones of everyday life as well. There are good and bad days on which to build a house, launch a business enterprise, change residence, go on a trip, harvest crops, sharpen cock spurs, hold a puppet show, or in the old days start a war or conclude a peace. The day on which one has born, which again is not a birthday in our sense. When you ask a Balinese when he has born, his reply comes to the equivalent of Thursday the 9th, which is not of much help in determining his age. But his Odalan is conceived to control, or more accurately, to indicate much of his destiny. Men born on this day are liable to suicide. On that to come thieves, on this to be rich, on that to be poor, on this to be well, or long-lived, or happy, on that to be sickly, or short-lived, or unhappy. Temperament is similarly assessed, and so is talent. The diagnosis and treatment of disease is complexly integrated with calendrical determinations, which may involve the odalans of both the patient and the curer. The day on which he fell ill, as well as they metaphysically associated with the symptoms and with the medicine. Before marriages are contracted, the odalans on the individuals are compared to see if their conjunction is auspicious, and if not, there will be, at least if the parties, as is almost always the case, are prudent, no marriage. There is a time to bury and a time to cremate, a time to marry and a time to divorce, a time to shift from the Hebraic or the Balinese idiom for the mountaintop, and a time for the market, for social withdrawal and social participation, meetings of village council, irrigation societies, voluntary associations are all fixed in terms of the permutational, or more rarely the lunar solar calendar, and so are periods of sitting quietly at home and trying to keep out of trouble. The lunar solar calendar, though constructed on a different basis, actually embodies the same punctual conception of time as the permutational. Its main distinction, and for certain purposes advantage, is that it is more or less anchored. It does not drift with respect to the seasons. This calendar consists of 12 numbered months, which runs from from new moon to new moon. These months are then divided into two sorts of also numbered days, lunar Tithi and solar Diwasa. There are always 30 lunar days in a month, but given the discrepancy between the lunar and solar years, there are sometimes 30 solar days in a month and sometimes 29. In the latter case, 2 lunar days are considered to fall on one solar day, that is, one lunar day is skipped. This occurs every 63 days, but although this calculation is astronomically quite accurate, the actual determination is not made on the basis of astronomical observation and theory, for which the Balinese do not have the necessary cultural equipment, to say nothing of the interests. It is determined by the use of the permutational calendar. The calculation was of course originally arrived at astronomically, but it was arrived at by the Hindus, from whom the Balinese in the most distant past imported the calendar. For the Balinese, the double lunar day, the day on which it is 2 days at once, is just one more special kind of day thrown up by the workings of the cycles and supercycles of the permutational calendar, a priori, not a posteriori knowledge. In any case, this correction still leaves a 9-11 day deviation from the true solar year, and this is compensated for by the interpolation of a leap month every 30 months, an operation which, though again originally a result of Hindu astronomical observation and calculation, is here simply mechanical. Despite the fact that the lunar solar calendar looks astronomical and thus seems to be based on some perception of natural temporal processes, celestial clocks, this is an illusion arising from attending to its origins rather than its uses. Its uses are as divorced from observations of the heavens or from any other experience of passing time as are those of the permutational calendar, by which it is so rigorously paced. As with the permutational calendar, it is the system automatic, particulate, fundamentally not metrical but classificatory, which tells you what day or what kind of day it is, not the appearance of the moon, which as one looks casually up at it, is experienced not as a determinant of the calendar, but as a reflex of it. What is really real is the name, or in this case, the two place number of the day, its place in the transempirical taxonomy of days, not its epiphenomenal reflection in the sky. In practice, the lunar solar calendar is used in the same way for the same sort of things as the permutational. The fact that it is loosely anchored makes it rather more handy in agricultural contexts, so that planting, weeding, harvesting, and the like are usually regulated in terms of it. And some temples, having a symbolic connection with agriculture or fertility, celebrate their reception of the gods according to it. This means that such receptions appear only about every 355, in leap years about 385, rather than 210 days, but otherwise the pattern is unchanged. In addition, there is one major holiday, Nyepi, to make quiet, which is celebrated according to the lunar solar calendar, often called by Western scholars the Balinese New Year. Even though it follows at the beginning, that is, the new moon, of not the first but the 10th month, and is concerned not with renewal or rededication, but with an accentuated fear or of demons, and an attempt to render one's emotions tranquil. Nyepi is observed by an area day of silence. No one goes out on the streets. No work is conducted. No light or fire is lit, while conversation, even within house yards, is muted. The lunar solar system is not much used for fortune tellings, for fortune telling purposes, though the new moon and full moon days are considered to have certain qualitative characteristics. Sinister in the first case, auspicious in the second. In general, the lunar solar calendar is more a supplement to the permutational than an alternative to it. It makes possible the employment of a classificatory, full and empty, detemporalized conception of time in contexts where the fact that natural conditions vary periodically has to be at least minimally acknowledged. Ceremony, stage fright, and absence of climax. The anonymization of persons and the immobilization of time are thus but two sides of the same cultural process. The symbolic, the emphasis in the everyday life of Balinese of the perception of fellow men. As consociate successors or predecessors in favor of the perception of them as contemporaries. As the various symbolic orders of person definition conceal the biological, psychological, and historical foundation of that changing pattern of gifts and inclinations we call personality behind a dense screen of ready-made identities, icon selves, so the calendar, or rather the application of the calendar, blooms the sense of dissolving days and evaporating years than those foundations, and that patterns inevitably suggests by pulverizing the flow of time into disconnected, dimensionless, motionless particles. A sheer contemporary needs an absolute present in which to live. An absolute present can be inhabited only by a contemporarized man. Yet there is a third side to this same process which transforms it from a pair of contemporary prepossessions into a triangle of mutually reinforcing cultural forces, the ceremonialization of social intercourse. To maintain the relative anonymization of individuals with whom one is in daily contact, to dampen the intimacy implicit in face-to-face relationships, in a word, to render consociates contemporaries, it is necessary to formalize relations with them to a fairly high degree, to confront them in a sociological middle distance, where they are close enough to be identified, but not so close as to be grasped, quasi-strangers, quasi-friends. The ceremoniousness of so much of Balinese daily life, the extent and the intensify to which interpersonal relations are controlled by a developed system of conventions and properties is thus a logical correlate of a ongoing attempt to block the more creatural aspects of the human condition, individuality, spontaneity, perishability, emotionally vulnerability from sight. This attempt is, like its counterparts, only very partially successful, and the ceremonialization of Balinese social interpretation is no closer to being complete than is the anonymization of persons or the immobilization of time. But the degree to which its success is wished for, the degree to which it is an obsessing ideal, accounts for the degree to which the ceremonialization obtains. For the fact that in Bali manners are not a mere matter of practical convenience or incidental decoration, but are of deep spiritual concern. Calculated polites, outward form pure and simple, has there a normative value that we who regard it as prestigious or comic when we don't regard it as hypocritical, can scarcely, now that Jane Austen is about as far from us as Bali, but any longer appreciate. Tami. Milu. ¿Dónde está la Mursi? ¡Mursi! Tami.